And I am really excited about anytime we can explore the topic of solo aging. And this is our number one topic. It is an amazing conversation topic, but it's also a very important topic to help us begin planning, even if we're married with children and don't identify as a solo ager right now. How many couples do you know where one spouse outlives the other? We all have the potential to be in a solo aging situation, and how we plan and how we make connections is very important. And that's one of the reasons why I think this is such a popular topic. And in one of our many previous conversations, we had this sort of conversation around, how do you start a support group? Wouldn't it be great if we could have a support group where I could make connections to people that are in the same boat as me? And in the audience, we had some members that had started a support group in Oregon. And I reached out to them and they were willing to come on and share their story. And so I'm gonna try to be quiet here, which is hard for me to do. And I am going to welcome them to the stage. And let's see, and hopefully Jeannie, yeah, there you go. Okay. All right. Well, normally we have one or two people on stage, and I sort of go around the little Brady Bunch cube, and we meet each other. And oh, I saw a nice little furry friend walk across the camera there. We meet each other and get to know our panel members. But I really want to just jump right in to this discussion on, you know, what you all created and how you created it, and then some of the solo aging topics that you discuss in your support group. And I want to make sure that our audience knows that at any point in time, if you want to jump in on this discussion, simply type in your questions in Q&A or use chat, and let's make this interactive. So I don't know who wants to go first in telling the story of your support group. Okay, we're going to start with Sarah. So Sarah, if you want to unmute your mic, and then
okay, so I think what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what motivated me to start the group in the first place. So I was married for 38 years, and my husband died in 2013, and something was missing. It just was, of course, and I thought, well, it took me a while to figure out what was missing. Well, one, there wasn't anybody in the house to have a conversation with about what happened during the day. There was, if I had something urgent happen or had an emergency happen, there was not a built-in partner that I could just turn to in that case. I found out that when I went to the grocery store, the world was made for two or more, a household of two or more. And if you bought the smaller amounts, it was more expensive. So I was discovering it costs more to live as a solo. And, I just didn't feel like I had anybody in my corner. I didn't have a built-in partner like I had when I was married. So I decided, well, maybe it's time to try out pulling some people together who had or were having similar experiences. So I pulled together a group of people that I knew, and we started talking about ideas and things that we did as solos, and they started sharing our ideas. Before that, though, I had done a lot of reading and research to look through what kind of topics single people were interested in. And then I pulled some ideas together, and I used those ideas and the topics that we talked about for this. I call it an experimental group. It was a group that ran for about 9 months. Then after that 9 months, it was summertime. I'm pretty busy outside in the yard in the summer. And so I took a break. And then I thought, do I want to do this, keep doing this by myself? And I said, no, I really would like to have a planning group. And I looked for specific people. I looked for people with resource background, mental health background, and project management background. And so I knew Kathy Fradkin, and she had worked in project management at Intel. And I found Jerry, and she is a resource person. And Jeannie, who is a longtime mental health practitioner, and myself, and I'm also a mental health practitioner. So we all came together as a group and worked together to further develop the Living Solo support group. And Kathy suggested that we present it to Viva Village, which we all are members of Viva Village, as an ongoing group for Viva Village, which we did. And now we're an official events group for Viva Village. And I tell you what happened for me as an individual in this whole process is that I found somebody that I can call, and I can go to work, go walks with within an hour, sometimes within a day or two. I found a friend who would actually go with me to a medical appointment and wait for me for 2 hours while I had a medical procedure. That was wonderful to have that kind of support. And I found a group of people that I go out to dinner with once in a while, and we just sit there and chat about nothing for 3 hours. I have found people to be in my corner. That's what I call it. People who will be in my corner is what I felt like I was missing, and I really needed it. And I found that through this development of this Living Solo support group. So I'd like to let other people talk about, Kathy and Jerry and Jeannie talk more about what they have discovered.
I love this, Sarah. I love the organic creating. You had a problem and you went out to the community and you've discovered other people had that problem. And now look at what has materialized out of this. We've had a few folks about asking what is Viva Village, and I typed in that it's part of the Village movement, which is a grassroots, community effort to support aging in place. And ironically, we have Barbara Sullivan, who's the executive director of the National Village to Village Network, on the discussion today too. So she introduced herself in there. I just wanted to let people know that. So who would like to go next in the sequence? One of my favorites, Jerry. And Jerry, before you begin talking, give us a little bit of why do you have this particular backdrop today?
Well, this is my favorite spot in Paris. So last time I was in Paris recently, I decided I should really get a picture appropriate for my background for Zoom. So this is when I go to Paris. This is one of the first places I go and I sit. And just before I leave Paris, this is where I go and I sit.
Oh, and that's great. And I was on one other call with Jerry. She's got lots of travel stories. But before you jump in with your piece, John Dahl has a great question because we have all women on the panel. She's asking, are there any men in your solo aging group?
There can be, I think at the very beginning, but it does tend to be a lot of women, and men haven't been showing up, but there's no reason they couldn't be.
Well, hey, if there's any single solo men, this might be a great opportunity to make a lot of really good friends. Yeah.
We did have a man show up early on, but one of our women connected up with him, and so he's no longer single.
Ah.
I didn't realize that.
This is one of the problems. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And there are usually a lot more women available than there are men.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. Y'all live longer. So, all right, Jerry, if you want to continue.
Okay, I'm one of the few in the group who's actually a lifelong solo. And I always thought that solo meant lifelong solo. And so my challenge was always finding information about, like, for instance, when retirement planning and everything was written for couples. And sometimes it'd be a bit of a chapter at the end of the book where, about for solos. So I was always looking for information to help me with my retirement planning and other things like that. And actually, I found a very good book. I'm going to hold it up. I don't know if you can see, Essential Retirement Planning for Solo Agers. I usually check books out of the library, but I like this one so much I went out and bought it. And there's one sentence in here in the foreword just whacked me upside the head. It says, the truth is we're all solo agers if we live long enough. And I realized that, yeah, I'm used to being a solo ager, but everybody is going to eventually end up in this situation. So maybe I have a lot of information, a lot of experiences that can help other people. And I can also learn from what they're struggling with. So when you talk about solo agers and when we talk about living solo, that includes the unicorns like me, the lifelong solos. I don't think I'm that much of a unicorn. It includes people who were once partnered, but now they're solo. And maybe it's been a very long time since they were partnered, or maybe it's very recent and they're struggling even more. And some people, it's like sometimes it's chosen. They put themselves in this position, and others, they're kicking and screaming. They don't want to be solo, and they're struggling with it, and they need the same kind of help. They need the same kind of answers. So it's quite a large community, and we even have some people in our group who aren't solo right now, but they are in a situation where it's clear that in the not too distant future they will be. So quite a large audience. And I think as far as I know, there's only one or two other people in our group who are lifelong solos. So.
Great. And I know that there's this weird background noise that comes and goes. We tried to resolve that issue when we were doing this previously. We couldn't pin it on any one person, but we will try to mute our mics when we're not talking. Our apologies. This is just the modern world. It almost sounds like we're tapped into some phone line or something like that. Okay, this is great, Jerry. Who would like to share next? Okay, and
I'll go next.
I'm going to mute myself here. Kathy.
So I'm Kathy Fradkin, and I've been a member of Viva Village forever. And I've been solo for about 15 years after a very long marriage. And it was, we have lots of really cool events for the village. And we thought, wow, we might as well develop, like Sarah said, we might as well develop an event for solos, because we have many solos of all types, as Jerry said. So we wanted to make sure that we had a good process for that. So we had a planning team, and the planning team is the people who you see on the screen, the panelists. And what we wanted to make sure is that we had a good process and a good system to make this Living Solo group a success. So we got together and identified the purpose, and really the purpose was to identify and provide a support group where solos could discuss what their needs were, what their feelings were, and then we could also share ideas and learn from each other. So, and we wanted to build a very safe, caring environment and a relevant environment. So we identified topics to cover, and the topics that we initially talked about as a planning group were things like holidays as a solo, traveling as a solo. It was all based on solo and our experiences in being a solo. Advantages and challenges and tips of being a solo. So we wanted to make sure that it was a very positive environment. So we didn't want it just to have a complaint group. and to say, oh my gosh, woe is me, I'm solo. We really wanted to provide good, helpful, supportive information. So when people got into the woe is me and the challenges, we wanted to make sure we provided lots of tips to kind of uplift the discussion. So once we identified the topics, through Sarah, we identified a lot of the people who wanted to be involved. We sent it out as a Viva Village event, and people signed up for it. We had like 23 people signing up for it. It was all on Zoom. It continues to be all on Zoom. And so initially we had about 20 of those 23 people attend. So we talked about the guide, talked about the purpose, talked about why you're here, the audience, and talked about the guidelines. We wanted to make sure everybody had a forum in which to share ideas and not one person took over. So we had some good ground rules. And then we shared our topics, and we showed it to them on the screen, and they added any other topics that they had. And so they added things like finances and how to best make friends, things like that. So it was very integrative, inclusive process, and they felt very, very warm and fuzzy. So then we started every month. We started to have the meeting online. What the planning group does is we identify the topics that have been prioritized by the group. We identify the topic for that month, and we identify questions that we want people to ponder about before we meet. So like traveling as a solo, the questions would be, how many of you have traveled as solo travelers? Why and why not? What are the challenges of being a solo traveler? What are good resources and tips for being a good solo traveler? So people, were prepared. A lot of people need thinking time ahead. And so we prepared them for that. And then we had great discussions about that in that month. So people are, we've been doing it for, 9 months or so. And so we've had very good attendance. We have at least 15 people at every session. And we have really good bonding discussions, really open discussions. And so it's gone very well. As a result, people have built a lot of good, we built a good community, and people have built a lot of good bonds. In those bonds, they wanted to do things on their own with other solos. And so we built in something called a Let's Go event, and everybody has the distribution list. Everything is open to everybody with their name and their email and their phone numbers. And so if somebody wants to go out to eat and they don't want to go out to eat by themselves, or they want to go to an event, then they send an email out to the group and in a Let's Go event and say, I'm going to do this, join me. And it's not a back and forth of what day do you want to do it. And it's the initiator says, I'm going to go on this day. If you want to join me, let me know and join me. And it's been very successful. So we've had things like going to the opera and going to the symphony, going out to dinner, going to plays. We have 18 people already signed up for our winter solstice party. And so it's very fun and very bonding. So it's successful. And every quarter we evaluate it as a planning group every month. And every quarter we ask the team, the whole group, how can we improve? This is a group event, so what do we want to do with it? So, and they had a lot of sorry, they have a lot of good ideas, and it's kind of evolved. So it's great.
This is great, and I love these discussions, the topics of interest, which is one of the things that I wanted to chat about here with you all today, because we could talk about for an hour maybe in the future on traveling as a solo or going out to dinner as a solo.
Right.
Oftentimes have making friends, but a lot of the questions that are coming through, and Jeannie, don't worry, I'm going to get to you, but I want to make sure to address some of the questions that have been coming through. The first off, yes, this group is affiliated with a village, but if you were here at the very beginning, you heard Sarah. She started this just as a personal project. She was a solo, and she thought about, okay, who do I know? And it sort of organically grew that way. There's our weird language coming through. We apologize. We haven't figured out how to stop that background noise. But let's see. Lisa Cook said, and I'm bringing this up because Lisa Cook says, I love the village movement. Any advice on how to start this type of group if there's no villages in your area? And I would sort of say, Sarah, you didn't start this as the village. It was just a personal project, right?
I started it just from some people that I knew or I knew about. They weren't necessarily people that were friends of mine or that I was really close to. They were people that I knew of, but I knew that they were solo. So I called each of these people individually and said, this is what I want to do. I want to pull a group of people together to talk about those things that people who are solo are interested in and would like some support with, is basically what I did. And I think that individual personal touch where you call and talk to each person and say, this is what we want to do, this is where we're headed, and we're going to have a Zoom meeting, and started on this date. And I got a pretty positive response just by making those personal calls to groups of people. The other thing to think about is, if you're a member of a church or any other organization in the community, those would be places to start. Your area agency on aging might be a place to start.
But I think, Sarah, what you illustrated is you don't getting an organization and doing this around an organization is a bonus. For those who are in the audience and you're a solo, I think the first thing is maybe connect with some other people that you might know. Could be just one other person, and have that conversation. And I think it can organically grow. And villages are a great home, but I love, Sarah, what you said. Churches, nonprofits, and area agencies on aging are another great place to find resources.
I agree. And I think one of the important things about it is, one of the most important things for me was just making that personal contact with people that I knew who were in the same situation that I was, is where it really started.
And I think another point to our success is that it's very well planned and very well organized and well facilitated. So we really want to keep it on a very positive, uplifting note. And so we have a good facilitator, one of us, identified for each session. And when it gets to be, slamming whatever, we uplift it, lift it up to where it's more positive. And that's very important, because otherwise it can just be a complaint group.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to leave out our last panel member, and then we can address all these questions that are coming in and open things up. And But Jeannie, if you want to tell us a little bit about your role and your story with the group.
Okay. Well, I think I'm the newest to the group, so there's a couple of things I want to say about the value of it, what I've gotten out of it. We had a discussion about what to do in an emergency. We addressed being solo and having emergencies, and I learned so much about how to prepare, you know, how to have the right paperwork signed and on the refrigerator, and who to call and when and all that. That was very, very useful to me. And it sort of took all the angst out of emergencies. And then I started watching, because I did get COVID, I was watching how I was reacting to being home alone for 7 days and, you know, getting groceries dropped off at the front door and cooking and all those things that were hard to do when I had COVID. That's been very interesting in terms of sort of my development as a solo. I've been solo for 25 years, but I have an adult daughter. So and she's a mile away. So it's not so difficult when there's somebody like that you can call on. And lots of our people don't have anybody to call on. So they need community, need us. The other thing I want to say is that I want to underline the fact that Sarah personally called people and reminded them of the meetings. And I think that's one of the best things you can do to start, is make sure that everybody understands what the meeting is and that they're invited to it, and that you go get them there. So that was, I think, very powerful. And you haven't had to do it again, have you, Sarah? Just the first time for the first meeting. And it's just taken off. So it's really exciting, really fun.
Well, this topic in general, and I always say this, and I know there's new people in the audience here, the term that's still out there is elder orphan, and it's such a negative term. And there's that background noise again. The solo aging term and the way that you all refer to yourselves as solo is so positive and empowering. But yes, there are some challenging things, but having some support to help you through it. Let me ask you, because it's come up in several questions, are there like some ground rules or like, have you all sort of documented any of this for folks that might be tuning in, interested in starting your own group?
So we have 2 or 3 things. Yes, we have documented everything, and so we can share that. We developed the ground rules as we've all been professionals and we know the value of ground rules, so we shared those. One person speak at a time. People don't judge what other people say. You know, we're all very familiar. The conversations tend to be lively, so we need to sometimes remind them, and that's where a good facilitator comes in. The other ground rules is that we don't spread misinformation, because that's possible. And so we come armed with lots of good knowledge, and we are definitely don't come off as the experts, but we do our research, and so we do have lots of good information that we show to them. So an example is for preparing for an emergency as a solo, we've used Wendell Cornfield's information about how to work with an emergency, how to prepare for that emergency when it comes. And so we've in sharing that information, people get the real good knowledge that they want, and it's not just willy-nilly of, oh well, I thought that. And so it's good, solid information shared.
What was the program you were referencing? Wendell Cornfield?
Wendell is she is a solo ager, and she might be online, and she works with solo agers in her community very, very effectively back east. And so she talks a lot about where we have learned so much about is how to prepare for an emergency, how to prepare for any health issues or any emergency in your household, and the community that you want to grow and develop in order to provide you support during those emergencies. That's an example.
Okay. And Kathy, since your mic is open, Joe Hewitt is asking, are you a program or a committee within your village? I know we've got several, let's see from the comments, we've got several villages here.
We have event groups. We have a women's coffee and a men's coffee and a women's a dine around, that type of thing. And we have a book club. We are an event group like those.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's not a program.
And then Jerry, I think you're going to be really excited about this, but I see in chat that Sarah Gieber, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correct, but the author of the book that inspired the beginning of this is actually in this discussion. So maybe at the end we can bring Sarah up to talk a little bit about her book. But tell me, what are you may have sort of talked about this a little bit, but what were some of the elements of that book that helped you provide a direction for this group?
Well, it was that, not, the book is useful for me because it's not just a single chapter about, oh yeah, and there's solo people who can't call their kids or can't do this or can't do that. But just that knowledge that I'm not a unicorn, because there are so many other people out there who are facing the same challenges. I have the advantage that I have been solo all my life, and this is my way of life, and I'm used to it. And if I want to go see a movie, I go see a movie. If I'm traveling and I want to go out to dinner on my own, I don't think anything of it. But to learn that there are people, there's one person in our group who's very self-confident. And I was so surprised to learn that she has never been out to dinner by herself in her entire life. And so that was a learning experience for me, that other people aren't as enthusiastic about the solo life as I have been.
On almost every solo aging discussion we've had, this topic of making friends, because for many of us, we have our circle of friends and family, and we've lived our whole life, and we really haven't made a new friend in 40, 50 years, and just relearning how to do that.
Well, it starts, if you focus on making friends, you can get sidetracked, because it's really about making connections. And friends don't just happen. It's not like falling in love and that was it, and the stars and everything. It takes time usually. And so it's making connections. It's a great part of this group.
Okay, and the answer about Wendell Cornfield, Wendell Cornfield is in the audience, and so Wendell says, I facilitate a solo agers group in New York City, meeting monthly for 8 years now. We do have men members, but I wish we had more to take advantage of what we're offering. And that's a question came in is, where is back east? And so I guess Wendell has been doing a solo aging group for many years here in New York City.
And she has great articles and great knowledge that she has shared. And we have tried to include men. I mean, we're not exclusive at all. But that one time that a man joined, it's a little intimidating when you have 15 strong women sharing ideas. And so that's their choice. But we surely want to see men. We would embrace that.
Great. Okay, let's see. Shirley Paul asks, do you meet on Zoom or is this in person?
We meet on Zoom. And we meet all the Let's Go activities that people initiate. They are all in person, going to movies, going out to eat, going to symphonies, whatever. They're all in person.
Yeah, our online meetings are usually about particular subjects, and we call it our semi-spontaneous activity is Let's Go. And that's when people do the invitation and people respond. And those are all in person. So we have a combination of Zoom meetings plus in-person activities.
Great. And Barbara Sullivan, the executive director of the Village to Village Network, has a really good thing that she wanted to share. She says, we have a LGBTQ work group at the Village to Village Network. We're looking for a speaker in January for solo aging, specifically LGBT and solo aging, because a high percentage of LGBT identify as solo agers. So yeah, reach out to Barbara if she's looking for a speaker in that area. There's our little background noise popping in again. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Oh, how many, Joe Hewitt asks, how many members of Via Village identify as solo agers? So you've said you've got about 15 people that show up at the meetings, but have you sort of done a survey or an inventory of how many people in the village are solos?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we have not, but like Jerry said, it's many, some people involved with our Living Solo group are soon to be solos, but they're not solos yet. We have actually, because our population is aging in our membership, we have more and more of those people. But I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, 20%, 15%.
And I think one of the questions is, you said identify as solo. We have people who are, you know, both solo and sharing living. I consider them solo, but they may not identify as solo, they've said. So
yeah, I think that's really a key. And one thing that we've seen on this discussion that I love about this topic of solo aging is we're getting people that join these discussions who are married with children, because they recognize that, hey, we've got a plan. One of us might be a solo, and we don't want our kids running around, you know, doing all this stuff for us. So while we've got this support network, we need a plan on how we're going to take care of ourselves. Let's see. Okay, and somebody just jumped into the discussion late. I want to remind everybody that this is recorded, but just to recap, to answer your question, Sarah, who you see on the screen, realized that she had some needs as a solo ager. She reached out to a few friends, created a group, and that group began growing and then became a part of a larger organization, an Aging in Place Village in Oregon. And so that's sort of the history for the latecomers here. Okay, Joy Laverty has a suggestion for Barbara. I'll email that to you, Barbara Sullivan. And let's see, I am looking through the questions here, and I need to look at the clock. We've got time. Oh, this is an interesting thing. Pat France says, are you familiar with Nextdoor, the application that provides information on the community? She says, I've had a lot of success with Nextdoor, perhaps using Nextdoor as a way to reach out to solos. And I think that's a wonderful example for folks in the audience that are looking to get started. If you're on Nextdoor, it does seem to be a pretty supportive, well, it can be supportive. It can also be a very critical platform. Out of curiosity, has your group used Nextdoor to promote this? group?
No, this is only for members and volunteers for Viva Village. We want to keep it that way. We do use Nextdoor a lot to promote our public events, but this is not a public event. But I think you're right. I think Nextdoor, or if you want to have it a public event, it's a great way to start.
I would say for Viva Village that if we had somebody come to a meeting to check us out, who was not a member of Viva, that would be okay. You know, come and check us out. But we'd like you to join us if you find that it is something that is helpful to you.
This is a nice note from Joe Hewitt. She says, I like the uplifting, positive support concept. For the newly solo entering the group, does it ever move into a more of a grief support arena, which could get a little bit more complicated?
We try not to go there because that is much more complicated mental health wise. That is much more complicated to have a grief support group than a positive, let's head in a direction that will uplift us with some very clear avenues to doing that, you know, like going to dinner or having somebody take you to a doctor's appointment or whatever it might be. That the grief counseling kind of thing has some very, you probably know Kubler-Ross. It has a whole setting or a whole group of responses and emotional, there's a large emotional discourse that occurs through grief and loss. We're not therapists. We don't act as a therapy group. We're a psychosocial support group that's specifically oriented towards encouraging people to connect and share. But we do not do therapy. We specifically stay away from being a therapy group.
Great. Yeah, Jerry?
Yeah. The questions that the panel comes up with as far as, you know, the topic for the month, and the questions are always intended to, you know, get practical advice, give tips, ask questions. So if somebody starts veering off into, oh, woe is me, that we gently get them back to, get the group back to, you know, what we're trying to accomplish, because I would say most people aren't there for that purpose. That they don't want that type of a group, but they have made connections in the group. So sometimes they might find somebody that they can share with like that. So it's not like we're shutting them down. It's just the purpose of the meeting is to share and be practical and do that.
It. Bob Lagoida says, have you explored the topic in your solo aging group of living and aging in place, or like in your current home versus moving to a senior living community or a more congregate living? Has that topic ever been discussed in the group?
We have talked about living situations. We have people who are in care facilities that are in our group, and we have people who are living on their own in their own homes in our group. So where you live is not really the issue. It's making connections with other solos and sharing solo experiences, no matter where you live. Although we have done some talking about how do you decide, you know, how do you decide about what to do about your living situation, and how do you get support no matter where your living situation is?
Great. Oh yeah, Kathy here, unmute. Okay. Yeah.
And also we have in our village, we're just a subset of the whole village, of course. We're just one piece of it. And our village does a really good job at working with Aging with Grace. And so we have an Aging with Grace event, and it's very popular and it's very well attended. It's every year. And it talks about how to age gracefully physically and mentally and emotionally. And right now we're working more with the end of life planning, or your last chapter basically, of how to build support, how to get support, how to make decisions in your transitions. We are our goal, our purpose in Viva Village, in any village, is to live at home effectively and safely. And so that's what we always want to drive, but some people can't. So we do offer a lot of informational sessions on that kind of the last chapter events. And we're building on that a lot more now. So so our solo members, of course, are part of that, or the whole population that benefits.
Okay, let's see. You might have a new member here. Renee Dunham says, where in Oregon is Viva Village located? I realize that location is not essential, but I'm considering moving to Oregon where my son and family are located. So where in Oregon are you?
So we are in the Portland, Oregon metro area. We're in Beaverton specifically, and we have a hub and spoke system. And so we have 11 smaller villages in Portland metro area. But we have a lot of villages in Oregon, and you can go on Villages to Village, Village to Village Network website, and you could see where all of those villages are.
So thus far, Viva Village is the only village in this area that has a solo living support group. The other ones could develop them, that just hasn't happened yet. But if you want to be in solo living, you have to move to Beaverton.
Okay.
And one thing about, starting up things, like whether you're in a village, whether you're in a solo living group, a lot of people will at the meeting will say, you guys should do this, you guys should do that. But it's not you doing it. It's you have an idea, find some people help you implement it, because people aren't going to do it for you. And so we try to get other people engaged, and the Let's Go has really helped doing that. People initiate something.
I like that. So Nancy Karp has a really good solo aging scenario that I think we all think about. And she says, how do people with limited mobility deal with these challenges? I can walk, but not all that well. So getting around is a challenge. And I think personally, when I think about me or my wife living solo, having compromised mobility is really challenging.
We have, that's one reason we have it on Zoom, number one. So we have people with compromised and limited mobility who benefit from living solo because it's on Zoom. We also have, as part of our village, we also have a what we call a partner program, where we have an advocate in the village assigned to people with limited mobility or emergency needs or temporary health needs, where we help them individually. So that's, again, part of the whole, and we're just a subset of that whole.
This is kind of interesting here, that Renee says, in your events group, do you have members who are not local? So I'm in Washington, D.C., but I'm considering moving to Oregon. Could she join your village and to be a part of the Zoom meetings? Or
we have not really come across that much yet, but if we do, my initial thought about that as the person that developed this is, yes, we would be open to having someone come to a Zoom meeting to join us in our conversations. That's something we would have to work, our planning group would have to get together and work on how we would develop that. But that's something I think we would be open to.
Great. I'm looking at the clock, and we are rolling down here, and let's see here. Someone says some people have a large family, but some solo agers say they feel solo in a crowd because family is different and special kind group. Can you expand and talk about this concern? Anyone can speak on this topic. I'm not sure if I articulated that question so that somebody understands it. Some people have a large family, but some solo agers say they feel solo in a crowd because family is different. Okay, yeah, I guess.
I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what that means. I know you can live in a home with a group of people and still feel like you're solo because you feel disconnected from those people for whatever reason. So that's also is one of the things we haven't really addressed, feeling solo or feeling disconnected, even though you're in a group of people. I think your experiences would be a little bit different than if you actually were living solo, just because the circumstances are different. So that also would be something we'd have to address and haven't really addressed yet is what does it mean to be solo in a crowd?
Great. Okay. Well, I got through most of the questions. I think there's some that are similar. So if you put something in there, hopefully you addressed it. We've got about 5 minutes, and I want to, I'm hoping that she's willing to join us on stage briefly. And that's Sarah Geber, who wrote the book that we referenced. And I think it's just really cool that this book that was one of the first inspirations that the author is in the audience. So Sarah, if you're, I believe I promoted you to the, oops, I either opened your mic or I meant to promote you to the stage.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. Okay. Well, I meant to bring you on so we could see you, but hearing you is great.
Okay, you can bring me on if you want. I have my camera set up. So.
Okay. Well, while I've got you, tell us a little bit about your inspiration for writing your book, but then what do you think of this group that has been inspired to start this group with your book in the background?
Well, it's wonderful. And I was thrilled to hear about all of you. Steve is the one that alerted me to the fact that you existed. And now I'm just sitting here really enthralled at all the participation. I know a number of the people that are on the call because we have an organization called PROS working with solo agers. And many of the people on this call are, well, a handful are part of that. Wendell is, Joy is, Nancy Ruffner is. And so we talk all the time about how we can help solo agers that we work with. Now, my inspiration for doing it is that I'm a solo ager myself. I can initially, when I started thinking about the book and thinking about what I would do with it, I envisioned solo agers, and I coined that term to mean people who did not have children, period, end of subject, whether they were married or single. If you don't have kids, you're a solo ager. But I got so much feedback from people who said, hold the phone, wait a minute, I'm a solo ager and I've got a kid, but I haven't talked to him in 10 years, or he lives in Germany, or whatever it was. So I really consider solo agers to be anyone who is aging, who feels like they're going to be aging alone. They may have a spouse that they know is going to predecease them. Even if they don't, my spouse and I both know that one of us is going to be a solo ager, so we both prepare for that. Yeah, I wish I had $1 for every person with children nearby that says to me, well, I don't want to be a burden on my kids. Well, good for you, but you're not really a solo ager. And that's just that's my position on it. And, you know, we could be very, very inclusive in this and have just anyone and everyone who thinks they might possibly sort of could have be a solo ager join these groups. But frankly, I like the idea that people really are in certain sets of circumstances where they know, especially those whose family lives far away and people who don't have children, they are truly solo agers, and we must come up with solutions. I'm sure you all saw the New York Times article recently by Paula Spann about the kinless. If you haven't seen it yet, look it up. It's very negative. And I'm pretty sure that our next Pros Working with Solo Ager meeting is going to be on how do we counteract that argument, and how do we start telling people that there are solutions. There are solutions for solo agers at every point in the aging process. And we're going to invent them, frankly, because this is the first generation to have so many. So,
well,
so I would like to say, though, for our group, we are pretty open to, like Jerry said earlier, there are some people who are thinking about the idea that they will be solo sometime in the future and wanting to know what get some education or some background for themselves about what living solo is like, who will attend our meetings, and we are open to that. So we're open to people who think they are going to be solo in the future, people who are, we have had people who say are living with a spouse who has Alzheimer's. They're there in the house with the person with Alzheimer's by themselves. You can feel pretty solo.
sure.
In that circumstance. So we do have people like that who will attend, and we're very open to people who are curious about what it means to live solo, who want to know more about it. We're open to helping them learn about being solo and helping people transition into the solo life.
I think there's a difference between people who are living alone, which many people, studies have shown that people who live alone are some of the happiest people in the world. Yeah, Jerry, you can witness that.
Definitely, Jerry, yeah.
I've certainly spent my time living alone, 10 years before I got married in my 40s. But there's a difference between people who live alone and have family that they know can support them as they get older, and those who just don't have that. And that's, I think, that's where I'm going to put my focus. I'm going to be writing a follow-on to this book sometime in the next couple of years. And it's definitely going to include a big part, maybe half the book, on how do you put together a group, just like you've done, Sarah, because that's what's going to be necessary for solos to support each other. And we have to come up with ways that we can support each other at the end of life. And that's where the rubber hits the road for most people.
I think what is essential about starting a group is what we have talked about earlier. And one of those is one person, two people, reach out to other people and make a personal contact and say, let's get together and discuss this and make plans to have a group.
Yeah, I love that.
It could start with one individual it starts really with one individual making some contacts with people that they know, and then gathering other people together with intentional purposes of developing a group, and gathering people into that, like the planning group where I started, is intentionally gathering people who have some background in resource development and project planning and mental health.
Yeah, and this is great. Sarah, I'm so glad that we could get you on. This is such an excellent tie-in, and and I'd love to have you back, and we can walk through your book or whatever's on your mind, because I really think you've got a lot of great thoughts in this area. I want to be sensitive to everybody's time, and we're at about an hour. So I first off want to thank all of you for what you've done and the inspiration that you're providing to others. And I like this as an example because folks in the audience that are sort of like asking questions about how to start or join a group like this, it really just starts with talking to your friends and neighbors and see where that goes. But then there's some creative platforms, joining a local nonprofit, a village, or using Nextdoor and bringing up a conversation on solo aging can be your own personal roadmap for your area or your circle of friends. And I always, don't we have such a wonderful audience? All these great questions that they ask, it really keeps the conversation going. Just a reminder, this is recorded. I'll have the recording up in a few hours. If you don't mind either sending me a link or a document. We had a lot of questions on the ground rules. If that's easy to share, send it over and I'll put it on the link with the recording and the chat and the questions.
Sure, we can do that.
Sounds great. All right. Thanks, everybody. And if we don't see you before the holidays, have a great holiday season.